A lot of times when great players pair with great coaches, tensions and frustrations start to boil over. Sometimes they can suppress the anger and aggression they have, but sometimes they can't, and things get really ugly. That's why we are going into some of the most heated moments and relationships between player and coaches. But before we jump into the 10 most heated moments between an NBA player and coach, please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons and make sure to share the video if you enjoy it. At number 10, we have Allen Iverson and Larry Brown. We're talking about practice, man. Practice. Who could ever forget these biblical words from former 76ers guard Allen Iverson? After being called out in 2002 by head coach Larry Brown for missing too many practices, Iverson went on a legendary rant against his former coach. Considering the 76ers had just been eliminated from the playoffs in the first round by the Boston Celtics, Iverson's timing made him look bad to say the least. In any event, it was later reported that Iverson was intoxicated during his rant. In my opinion, that makes his rant even more epic than once thought. Number 9. Phil and Kobe. Sure, these two eventually patched things up and won a couple titles together. However, not before Bryant refused to follow Jackson's basketball strategy and insisted on doing his own thing. Kobe has always been hard-headed, but he took it to a new level in the era post-Shaq. In fact, when Jackson left coaching the Lakers, he wrote a book that blamed Bryant for a lot of LA's problems. And of course, all of this was going on while Bryant was openly feuding with teammate Shaquille O'Neal. That kind of drama is perfectly fit for only Hollywood. Number 8. Stephen Marbury and Isiah Thomas. This brings me back to the days the Knicks had potential but were heavily derailed by friendly fire. And that was done by one man. That man being Isiah Thomas. Now, the talented but troubled former Knicks guard Stephen Marbury was infamous for clashing with coaches. But the hothead and former All-Star Marbury reached his breaking point in 2008 with Isiah Thomas. In the midst of a disappointing season, and on the heels of benching Marbury, the former Knicks coach and Marbury reportedly had a physical altercation on the team plane after a game in 2008. Although with the Knicks there are never winners, you could say Marbury won this feud, as the Knicks fired Thomas in February of 2009. Number 7. Darren Williams and Jerry Sloan. When it came to strict and old-school coaches, Jerry Sloan took the cake. The former Utah Jazz head coach was known for being extremely tough on his players, and that just didn't mesh well with point guard Darren Williams. Williams and Sloan bumped heads constantly, and the two nearly came to blows during halftime of a 2011 game against the Chicago Bulls. Sloan would retire that very same night, and Williams was soon shipped off to the Nets via trade. What a way to end your career. Number 6. Erik Spoelstra versus LeBron James. A lot of people didn't realize that there was some tension between the King and Coach Spo. While a lot of the LeBron James and Erik Spoelstra feud was driven by rumors, it was pretty clear from the looks of things that the two men didn't get along. James allegedly blamed the stacked Miami Heat squad's poor record on Spoelstra's coaching methods. This eventually led to LeBron actively campaigning for the Heat to fire Spoelstra, even going so far as to ask team president Pat Riley to come back to coaching in Spoelstra's place. The parties involved in the spat have denied these claims in the aftermath, keeping much of this argument a mystery. Number 5. Stan Van Gundy versus Shaquille O'Neal. Van Gundy is a funny character. He is a good coach, and he also has had a lot of problems with the star players he's coached. At first glance, it appeared that Stan Van Gundy and the Diesel got along really well, but a few years later, after both men had left the Miami Heat organization, their personal beef became a public one. Van Gundy accused Shaq of flopping, and Shaq responded by calling his former coach the Master of Panic. While both gentlemen have platforms to speak on nowadays, neither of them will further comment on their disagreements. Number 4. Rajon Rondo and Rick Carlisle. It isn't surprising to see Rondo on a list like this, even though he is a really solid player and at this point in his career is like a player/coach on the floor. He has always been short-tempered, so in Dallas, after acquiring the all-star point guard from the Boston Celtics in 2014, the Dallas Mavericks looked poised to make a deep playoff run. Instead, Rondo and head coach Rick Carlisle clashed from the tip of the season. Rondo was eventually benched and sent home during the 2015 playoffs, as the Mavs' season ended in the first round. In the offseason, Rondo bolted to the Sacramento Kings, but it was the Lakers where he has since revived his career and won a championship in the bubble. As of today, he has just signed with the Atlanta Hawks. Before we go into the top 3, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Number 3, Stan Van Gundy versus Dwight Howard. Here we go again, another Stan the Man Van Gundy sighting. In hindsight, Stan Van Gundy may have been the best thing to happen to Dwight Howard's career. Van Gundy turned Howard into one of the most dominating centers in the NBA with the Orlando Magic. But how did Dwight return the favor? By repeatedly lobbying management to fire Van Gundy, of course. Prior to a 2011 game against the Knicks, Van Gundy all but confirmed the rumors that Dwight was trying to get him fired, when, out of the blue, Howard came up to his head coach and put his arm around him as a friend would. It was an awkward moment to say the least. Van Gundy was eventually fired in May of 2012.
Go, run, move! Ah!
Number 2, Jordan versus Jerry Krause. Now, this isn't a player-coach because this is a player versus management issue, but because of who the player is, and during a dynasty run, it should be very much highlighted. Jordan's issues with Bulls general manager Jerry Krause were well documented in The Last Dance. This feud began in 1986 and extended past Jordan's last game for Chicago in 1998, with the Bulls somehow overcoming the two's issues to win 6 championships. In 1986, Jordan despised Krause for trying to withhold him from returning to action after breaking his foot early in the season. Krause put Jordan on a stringent minutes restriction to end the year, which infuriated the ultra-competitive Jordan. Krause wanted to tank and avoid the playoffs to earn a favorable draft pick, but Jordan willed his team to the playoffs. Once unleashed in the first round, Jordan set a playoff record with 63 points in a game against the 67-win Celtics. Jordan lost trust in Krause after that and continued to grow hatred for him as the years went on. Krause was always difficult to offer substantial contracts to Jordan and his teammates, in particular Scottie Pippen, and repeatedly credited the organization's structure for the Bulls' success instead of the players. The tipping point came before the 1998 season when Krause told head coach Phil Jackson it'd be his last year as the team's coach, even if he went 82-0. Jordan made it clear he didn't want to play for any other coach, but Krause was forceful that the organization he built was bigger than any single coach or player. What an idiot. Krause, for some reason, didn't want to keep Chicago's core of Jordan, Pippen, and Jackson together past 1998, feeling that the team's best seasons were in the rearview mirror. Despite completing Chicago's best three-peat in the decade, Krause stayed true to his word and let Jackson walk. Jordan ended his career with the Wizards, Pippen went to Houston, and Jackson won 5 more titles with the Lakers. Finally, at number 1, we have PJ Carlesimo versus Latrell Sprewell. Already a 4-time All-Star by late 1997, former Golden State Warriors shooting guard Latrell Sprewell felt head coach PJ Carlesimo was getting on his case too much in practice for making a few poor passes. Sprewell told Carlesimo he wasn't in the mood to receive criticism that day, and he proved it. When Carlesimo got on Sprewell's case even more, Sprewell responded by threatening to kill Carlesimo, and then proceeded to choke him for a little less than 10 seconds before the two were separated. Needless to say, the relationship between Carlesimo and Sprewell was broken and wouldn't be fixed. Sprewell was suspended 10 games by the team and 1 year by the NBA. His contract was eventually voided, and he signed with the Knicks in 1998. Looking back, it was a pretty good move by the Knicks, as Spree was definitely productive for them. It should be pointed out that Sprewell would refrain from choking his coaches for the rest of his years in the NBA. Check out some of these videos.